Tim. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Hopefully this plan looks familiar, so we'll just do a brief overview, but kind of just using the list on the other side of the existing features, the Roosevelt Edge, as we started to refer to this, the Maple Leaf Terrace, and the entire upper portion on the new lid, the Sports Terrace, this down here, and of course what we're here tonight to look a little more detail and later on is the Family Terrace. So the kind of existing things that we have, just so everybody gets a sense, Roosevelt runs north-south here. This is 14th over on this side. The existing building that SPU uses is situated right here. There's the water tower. And the reservoir, just so you can kind of get a sense of where this lidded structure will be. There's little tiny squares that might not be visible from where you're sitting, but they mark the outside corners of the actual reservoir. And then there's another set of line that you can almost see, which is a 50-foot offset, which we're required to put in the mark so that anybody doing work around the reservoir on the surface will know where the reservoir is actually buried. So that's kind of the extent of the reservoir itself. Some of the features that we've incorporated, the Roosevelt Edge being the busy edge, traffic and cars and a lot of the interaction, a lot of people coming and going to the park. We put a main gathering space in this area with a shelter, the active spaces for some sport courts, some activity spaces in that area also. You'll see there's existing trees in this area that border Roosevelt, and then the idea of starting to get some new landscapes, new vegetation in that area. Again, we're off the lid for most of that, so we have a little bit more freedom of what we want to try to do. So we thought we'd take advantage of that and put some of those features into that area. You can kind of tell that the lid is a big open space with constraints on what we're actually allowed to do over the top of the lid. About a 24-inch profile is about all we're allowed to put down as far as material goes. This will have a gentle slope off all four directions, and mainly just be kind of a nice open general use field of natural grass. But we looked at it and said we kind of want to think about a way that we can incorporate some of what we heard from the community, and kind of hearing about the wind, water, and wings theme, playing off of that idea. We kind of have this idea to go with some earth waves, some earth berms. Interesting enough that this is one idea that when we met with SPU, that they actually were possibly interested in us doing or allowing us to do, because what we said is we can actually create some new landforms by putting foam on the reservoir. We're not adding any additional weight, and then just take the profile of soil and move it up on top of the foam and create some of that. Some of this could be done with plant materials, so the height of plant materials, that type of thing. But just kind of give this interesting edge, kind of trying to pick up on the theme, this idea that it's going to be open water, and now it's going to be a reservoir, buried reservoir, which is something to kind of pick up some character that was important to the community and to the neighborhood. So something that kind of personalizes this. Down in this corner, we've identified, with the help of the community, views. Very important from this park. There's a location way back here that has some pretty strong views in both directions. There's another kind of local view from this area on this corner, but this is one of the stronger views where you actually see the city, the water, the mountains. And so we started to set this up as a kind of a gathering space, viewpoints, places for people to be able to sit and look at the views and enjoy that. So kind of an informal gathering space over here that we hope will take some of the burden of this ridge, which we understand is where everybody goes to watch the fireworks and other things once a year basis. So, the slope in between, so we have the existing slope with the vegetation. There's an existing stair which is slated to come out. It's still there today, so might be one of my questions for Stephanie, is that stair really going to come out? But we've got another access point identified in here. The intention being that you can enter the park here, be able to move all the way through and exit the park out through the north. Likewise, I point out that you can enter the park on the east, move through, and then exit to the west. So we're trying to create some through routes, circulation through the park. So most of the terrace or the hillside will stay with the existing vegetation. It's an environmentally critical area, so we have to be careful of what we do in that area. We might be able to limb some trees and get a little bit more views, but we have to be pretty cautious what we're doing. So down on the sports terrace, looks probably pretty familiar. That was intentional, is that we're trying to use as much of the space as it exists today because we don't have a lot of budget allocated. But we want to think about resurfacing these, maybe getting new irrigation in this area, maybe expanding the playability of this field because it does slow back pretty quickly in here. So some pretty modest enhancements, maybe a little bit of a plaza space for people to wait and gather between games, waiting for their game to start after the game is finished. Overlay for some modified size soccer fields down here also as an opportunity. And then lastly, the terrace, we'll talk more about that, but the restroom, the existing restroom in the park is right here. We've got a slope on this side, which defines one edge of it with some pretty good sized trees and a hedge, which is a pretty unique feature that not many of Seattle parks have hedges that are kept in check, as this one is. Then the play area, so this idea of having a couple of different kinds of opportunities for play. We kind of a natural play, a built play, and a children's garden were some of the themes that we worked with and had people give us input the last time we got together. And I think that kind of brings us full circle. So
just a couple of quick things first. So are there any more questions regarding the whole of the reservoir project?
On the top end of the design, there's a lot of trees. Can you tell us anything about those trees?
Where we had left it with the schematic plan was that those are all probably smaller scale trees.
Why?
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 Well, because we're respecting the views of the people that live along that north edge, the openness. You'll notice that they were, even though from the park they were in a band like this, they were also arranged sort of radially so you could see through them. So from in the park you'll be able to see this kind of growth of trees at the north side, but respecting the views that these neighbors have always had of the park and through beyond the park and to the city and the mountain beyond. So we just thought a smaller scale tree would be appropriate for that type of application. They might be columnar too. We might go more vertical as an option, but definitely not big heavy shade trees isn't what we were thinking.
So that's it. Just smaller trees. That's what you've got first now. I mean, you haven't thought about what trees.
No, because we're focusing on the kids area now, and then we'll get going on the design development here in another month or so. We'll start to identify species and varieties.
A couple weeks ago, the construction folks tore out a swath like 50 feet wide of the trees right in the middle. What's at the top of that big gray square that's at the base of the lid?
Yeah, they did. They took down a swath and I can't give you the technical background, but there are a lot of pipes and utilities that are running through there. So it's kind of that area is just riddled with their required systems.
But what's the square up there? Is that a building or is that just like a concrete platform?
There's 3 access points that SPU will have. This is one, and there's 2 smaller ones up here. You'll probably see, we've been working on Jefferson Park down in Beacon Hill, and you'll probably have, well, right now it'll be probably a 10-foot chain link fence with barbed wire on the top, and then you'll see some flat structures inside there. Most of the space is for them to be able to get trucks in there and maneuver and that type of thing. So there's not a lot of other things in there, but it will be a fenced-off space. It's partly why we try to mask these as best we can. They don't want us planting anything tall or vertical near them, but we try to put them into some of these sweeping forms so that we can mitigate the presence a little bit.
So SPU's main access is going to be through here, and they need 24/7 access to those wells. So that's something we're very, very conscious of in the design. Any other last questions? Yes?
Is the area around the water tower, is that going to be changed off? Is there some like contamination issues?
There are contamination issues there, and we're not touching that with this project.
Well, the fence, we've actually got the drill with the black line on that shows the fence that will be there. What you see when we sweep that form in again was an idea that they've been warm to. We haven't gotten approval to do it, but this idea that we could actually just ignore the fence and sweep some of our landscape, maybe it's grasses, maybe it's a kind of ground cover shrub, but just try to soften that transition.